Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I am Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup, I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the family. Alright, I know, it's a little much. If you were curious about this look, I just filmed a chatty get ready with me. This is using the Notoriously Morbid. We don't always Why is this palette named that? Lord have mercy. Anyways, that's one of their recent releases. So I filmed using that. But on my lips, I am wearing the Fenty Turks and Caicos Mademoiselle Lippy. Now this line has been discontinued. I don't know if this one is still available, but I bought it for $7. So I'm wearing it. I don't know where else why did I buy this? Anyways, so I have nowhere else to wear it, so I thought I would wear it in this video because it matches the eyes. Look at that. Anyways, as you already saw from the title and the thumbnail, we are back to rank my last 11 palettes that I tried. So I have been really working through a lot of palettes. I just haven't really had a chance to film with them. And the thing about these ranking videos is I like to make sure that I've tried the palettes more than once because you really need to try a palette multiple times to get a feel for it. Sometimes you like it upon first try and then later on you're like, you know what, that was a fluke, I don't really love this. Or it could go the opposite way. You try it, you hated it, and then it grows on you. So I have 11 palettes to try for you guys. I'm just gonna dive right in. I will insert pictures if I have them of like me wearing the palette or swatches, and if I do have a video reviewing any of these, it will of course be linked in the description box below, so make sure you check it out. Okay, coming in at number 11 will be no surprise to anyone at all, and it is the Heather Austin and Adept Cosmetics collab palette. So I do have a full review of this palette that literally just went up, to be honest. And I talked about why I don't like this palette in that. So I will make sure and link that below. But just really quickly to summarize, these mattes don't blend. They don't blend at all. And I thought that the shimmers were subpar. I have other Adept palettes that I prefer a lot more over this one. And the fact that I couldn't blend these mattes, no. Ain't nobody have time to be sitting there struggling with an eyeshadow palette. And that was one that I struggled with. I tried it 4 different times because I was like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Everybody else seems to love this. It has to be me. And I just had to sit and be like, girl, no, it's fine if other people like it if you don't like it. I didn't like it. I'm definitely not keeping it. It's not one that I would recommend if you have similar tastes to me or if you have a similar application style. But like I always say, make sure you watch multiple reviews because something that I like, others may not, and something that others hate, I may not like. So, yeah, that is dead last in my collection. And the first palette, I am like, oh, that has to go. That one is 100% being decluttered. Coming in at number 10 is another palette that I honestly did not like, but I'm still iffy about because when I tried it the first time, I struggled with it. And then I did a second look and I was like, ooh, that's actually cute. And while the first look was a struggle, it did come out really nice. But I don't know if I want to be struggling with the eyeshadow palette to have a nice look at the end. That is my sort of thought process when it comes to eyeshadow and makeup. When you have a collection as large as mine, or even like half the size of mine, it gets to the point where you just want ease and simplicity. And while you can make an eyeshadow work, no one wants to have to make an eyeshadow work or to spend hours, not hours, but like 30 minutes blending an eyeshadow just to make it work when there are easier products on the market. So coming in at number 10 is the Lois Cosmetics Meet Me at Midnight palette. Now they did release a palette before this and I looked at the reviews of that one and I know a lot of people weren't impressed with that formula or with that palette. So I felt like I should have known going into this that it may not be all that it's chalked up to be. To be quite honest, the pictures of this palette on the website look a lot more vibrant than the way they actually perform. I feel like those pictures are edited to make this seem super vibrant, super pigmented when swatched, and it wasn't that. I really struggled with my first look with this palette. The shimmers just did not apply to the eyelids. Like when I swatched them, they kind of stuck to my finger and I couldn't get it to transfer to the lids, and that was a huge problem for me. And the shimmers are just satin-like, and not that nice satin-like formula that I like. It was just satin to the point where I was like, what was the reason? What was the point? was able to come up with a nice enough look. And then when I used this the second time, I had a much better experience with blending the mattes and applying the shimmers. But at the end of the day, I feel like I still have to work too hard to use this palette for it to make sense. Now, this is a UK based brand, so not only did it take longer to ship, it cost a little bit more, and I was like, that's just too much work for this kind of palette. It is a very jewel toned palette, so I can get all of these shades in my like Sydney Grace palettes. Like, these shades are a dime a dozen. I did not need this palette to get it. And to have lackluster shimmers and mattes that are meh at best, no. So those are like number 10 and number 11 are two fails for me, to be very honest. And everything else kind of after that are palettes that I like, I think. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see when we get to it. So this one I probably will keep because I did like the second look and I want to give it a couple more tries before I make my final decision. But I don't think I'll be purchasing any more from the brand, because if that is the formula that they're working with, those satin-like shimmers and, you know, meh mattes, I'm not interested. There are no special shades in that. There are no other, you know, like some more sparkly or crumbly, some more metallic than satin. It's literally the exact same shimmer formula for all of the shimmers, and I didn't like the formula, so I think I will be passing on that brand going forward. Coming in at number 9 is the Sugar Drizzle Butterfly palette. I think this is what it's called. First of all, this has probably the worst packaging I've ever seen. I absolutely hate this packaging. To be quite honest, I don't like the Sugar Drizzle packaging at all for any of them. I feel like it's very stock imagery. Like, it just doesn't feel special, or I don't like it. Now, this palette is a blue, purple, green palette. Now, overall, these shades were very high impact. I will give them that. So they have a very high impact, but the mattes here were horrible. I absolutely hated the mattes in this palette. I think the only real shade that I appreciated was this shade here, because it is a multi-chrome that shifts. So that I thought was nice, because it had that nice metallic wet look. But other than that, I felt like the shades here were just okay. And because I struggled with the mattes in this, and quite frankly, I preferred reaching into other palettes to get mattes and then paying it with these shimmers. This was a nice shade too here though. Flawed. Look at that. These wet shimmers are really, really beautiful. I'll give them that. But I did create this halo eye look using the purple shade and then applying the gold to the center that I enjoyed. I thought it was really cute. But I am not inspired to reach for this palette, primarily because I don't like the way the mattes perform in this. For the most part, I don't like having to reach into other palettes to create a look. And you will see that theme come up with these products, these palettes, and the ones that are ranking a little bit lower. But yeah, I don't like the packaging of that one, and I did not like the way the mattes performed, and yeah. I don't know. I feel like I don't have a huge explanation for a lot of these, because it was just like, I didn't like it. It was okay. It was meh. Sorry. I am not more articulate today. Coming in at number 8 is actually one that I did like. I really did like it. This is ranking a little bit lower for a few reasons, and that is the Melt Cosmetics Gemini 2 palette. Now, I purchased this from the Melt website when it released, because they had a bundle that was like $100, and then you got 20% off, so it was $80, which made each palette $40. So this is the color story for the Gemini 2 palette. Absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. I love me some red shades, and you do get that in like this first half of the palette, and then you do get these really nice greens. Now, the issue that I have with this palette, or with the Gemini palette itself, is that you only get 2 shimmers. So I wish there was at least 1 or 2 more shimmers to make this a little bit more balanced, but I could live with it. The issue here, though, is that these 2 shimmers are very, very deep. Like, you can only get a really deep grungy look with this palette, because both of the shimmers that they've provided us are extremely deep. And they have 2 different textures. The red shimmer has a very satin-like texture, and the green shimmer has a little bit more of a grit to it. So it's a little bit more chunky, and I actually prefer the green shimmer over the red one. However, I really liked this palette for the red, so I wish that the red had a more metallic like shimmer to it than the green. So that kind of sucked. And when you really look at this palette, these first 4 shades here are so very similar that they could have replaced any one of these with a metallic shade for us. Like these 2 shades here are pretty much identical. We could have gotten another shimmer in here, and I really wish they would have done that. And while I do like this palette, I feel like this can be a bit much for someone that is of a lighter complexion, because like I said, both of those shades are grungy deep shades. Like both of these shimmers are grungy deep shades, and the palette definitely leans more grungy. So for somebody that is of a lighter skin tone, I can see that being a bit too much in your face. So it does rank a little bit lower, because I wish it had something that was a little bit lighter in there, especially going into summertime. Like I don't want to be that deep and grungy in the summertime. Coming in at number 7 is another palette that I did not give the best review. I feel like I'm ragging on all of these palettes. Like they're not horrible, I don't know. It was not a great palette month, I guess. So coming in at number 7 is the Clionadh Cosmetics Dragon Fruit palette. I wanted to like this so much. I really did. And I feel like this is ranking lower for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this palette retails for $50-something, which I think is great for Clionadh in terms of what her shadows typically cost. But then shipping was like $15. So I paid $75 for this palette, and I don't think that it was worth $75. To be very, very frank, I don't think this was worth $75. Now, this palette squeaks to no end. And if I am spending that amount of money on a palette, you can't be coming in here squeaking. Not at all. The other thing too with this palette is the color story. Now, I knew going into this that it was going to be a pink palette. I saw that it launched, it was going to be pink. If you cover up these 2 green shades, it's a pink palette. And I don't reach for this. Like, I have to force myself to think about this palette to reach for it. And while the shades perform well enough, I don't necessarily think it was worth it. When it comes to Clionadh, you're thinking about her single shadows. You're thinking about those high impact shimmer shades that are super duper sparkly. And while we do get some of that, there are supposedly 2 multi-chromes in here, which are probably the weakest multi-chromes possible. So I'm like, what was the reason? What was the point? We do get a new like satin formula, I believe, which is okay, and you can create full looks because those satins blend out like mattes and they work well as mattes. But I don't have a desire to use this palette or to use these shadows. Everything is super duper pink. I feel like if I want to use this palette, I have to reach into other palettes to come up with some mattes where I can create some sort of diversity or some sort of dimension, so it's not just a straight pink look. So it's a nice enough palette. The shadows perform really well. The shimmers are sparkly. Like, you get all of that goodness when it comes to this palette. But it's not a color story that I'm inspired by. Quite frankly, I have to force myself to reach for this. And when I do decide to reach for it, I also have to reach for another palette because I don't like the satin shades that they provided us with, because it means I'm going for a pink look. And I very rarely am like, oh, I want to create a pink look. So it's not one that screams, use me, pick me in my collection. Coming in at number 6 is a palette that I like. So I think we're getting to the good ones, and that is the Nomad Fire and Ice palette. I'm not in a negative mood today, guys. I just don't know. It was just not the best month for me palette wise. So this is the Nomad Cosmetics Fire and Ice palette. As you can see, you get some blue shades, and then you get some red sort of fiery shades, and you get like a random green and a purple. This is a nice palette. Overall, when it comes to Nomad's formula, I absolutely love it. I have no issues when it comes to their formulas. And what I always appreciate about the Nomad brand is that for the most part, I can use all of the shades in their palettes. None are too light, none are too ashy. Everything blends out really nicely. They aren't super high, shiny shadows in terms of like typical indie shades where you think of really, really high impact and sparkly. So I feel very comfortable wearing the Nomad palettes to like work. This is a beautiful palette. I love that I can get so many different shades. And I think that this is an all season or all year round palette. Like, I think you get really nice colors that you can use both in the summertime and in the fall. And I think it's just a solid one. Like, if you had to just pick one palette to travel with, this would be a good one because you can get a variety of looks. You can get some more neutral leaning looks if you kind of stick in this area here. But then you can add some color with these sort of blues and greens and the purples. And this is a really, really nice duochrome that has a purple blue shift. So, you know, if you really wanted a solid Nomad palette, this is one that you can pick up. Is this my favorite Nomad palette? no. Like, it's one that I think I would honestly forget about, but it is a really nice palette. So it's falling kind of in the middle of the pack because it's nice, but it's like not one that I'm like, ooh, let me reach for that one. Coming in at number 5 is one that I do want to reach for, and it's super colorful. So I don't know why, but my brain was like, yes, use it, use it, use it. And that is the Spellbound Oracle palette. Now, I discovered Spellbound when I bought the Cult palette, and I fell in love with the formula. Like, it's so good. Like, this is a very colorful story, so you get pretty colorful looks. Like, you get some really pinky shades, you get some nice purple, some green, some red, and you're kind of like, that doesn't seem like a palette that you would love, but I do. What I loved about Spellbound when I first tried it is that I felt like it just performed really well. The mattes were lightly pigmented, but so much so that it gave me a lot of control when it came to blending and building, which I appreciated. And I think is great for someone that is a beginner to eyeshadow. Like, you want something that gives you the control so you can build and blend and, you know, just take your time. And the shimmers in here are satin. Like, you are not going to get that high impact sparkly like type of shimmer. And I know I kind of talked down on that before, but this is the kind of satin that I like. It actually reminds me a lot of the Natasha Denona Zendo type of satins, where it's just really pretty and beautiful and effortless, and the type of satins that I would wear out in public comfortably. Like, these just look so soft on the face that it gives you a really nice soft look without being very over the top. Sometimes I don't like wearing colorful shadow out in public or to work or anything because it can be really, really loud, but I feel like this allows me to wear colorful eyeshadow in a very soft way where it's not too distracting, where it's not too bold on my face, and I really love this palette. I love the Spellbound Beauty formula. I don't know where it's from, I don't know what they're using, but this is a really solid formula if you prefer those more subtle satin-like looks, and I think it would actually be really nice for more textured, more mature skin if you want to use color and you don't want something that's going to really emphasize texture. Coming in at number 4, we have another Melt palette. We have a lot of Melt palettes in this one, and that is the Melt Cosmetics She's in Parties. I understand now what people be saying about Melt. I get it. I get it. Now, I had always been really wary of Melt because they have been known to have a very inconsistent formula. And I've always heard people say really good things about the She's in Parties palette. And they were right. This is freaking fabulous. Absolutely stunning. So easy to use. So blendable. And you get the perfect balance of light and dark shades. So this one definitely has a lot more shimmers than the other Gemini palette that I mentioned. You get 3 mattes and 2, 4, 5 shimmers. So you get actually more shimmers than mattes. But what I love is that you get some lighter shimmers and then you get that deep grungy shimmers, because this palette gives you the opportunity to go really deep and grungy or to keep it really light and airy. Whatever your preference is, whatever floats your boat. And I think that it's a beautiful palette. No, it's not going to give you a lot of versatility. This is a mauve palette. You're going to get a mauvey look. So that's what it is, a very monochromatic palette. But the performance of this can't be denied. Like, it's just so easy to work with that you can create some really stunning looks just very quickly. Coming in at number 3, we have the second palette from the Gemini duo, and this is the OG Gemini 1. Can I just say that the packaging on these palettes are amazing. It's very high quality, very luxe. And this, I think, is the perfect fall palette, but it doesn't matter because it's so freaking gorgeous. I do have a reel of me using this palette on my IG, so if you're not following me on Instagram, you should definitely be doing that if you want to see me use this palette in a reel. But this is so beautiful. These kind of like mustardy, earthy shades just warms my heart. And I do love that the 2 shimmers in this palette are definitely a little bit brighter than the ones in Gemini 2. So I think that these, it's just perfect because I love that you can get a really nice green look, or you can get a really nice sort of neutral gold look, but you can mix these 2 together and come up with a beautiful look across the board. And I'm actually not mad that we only have 2 shimmers in this palette, because I think that the 2 shimmers that they picked worked really well. I do think that you can still go pretty grungy with this, even though the shimmers are definitely on the lighter side. But I also really think that you can just keep it really light and airy if you prefer. So Love this. And with the Gemini 2 palettes, the mattes, spectacular. Like, that is some of the best mattes that I've used. And I have actually reached into Gemini 2 to just use the mattes and pair it with another palette, because the mattes in these Gemini palettes are amazing. Okay, we're coming down to the last 2 palettes, and in the second place is this itty bitty baby here. This is the Flamingo Gold from Sigil Inspired Tammy Tanuka. This is so freaking tiny. It is basically a sample size, and I'm kind of mad I didn't buy the full size. Spoiler, I love the Tammy Tanuka formula. I am very sad that we cannot purchase from the brand right now, but the formula in this is amazing. When I first tried it, I was like, oh, okay. And that was the first time I felt that, like, excited and taken aback since I'd used, like, Pat McGrath shadows. So I have been really, really loving the Tammy Tanuka palette. Now, what I love about this, aside from it being like pocket size and very travel friendly, is that this is a perfect neutral sort of everyday palette. This shade here that obviously you can see has a lot of wear and tear is a multi-chrome, so it does have a pink, gold, green shift, and I have been wearing that almost non-stop to like go out in public to like events. I wore this to my fiance's graduation ceremony. I wore this to one of our friends' birthday dinner because it's so beautiful and so much of an effortless multi-chrome that I feel like I can wear it without thinking that my eyeshadow is super distracting. Like, it gives a very nice, beautiful flip that is just soft and subtle, that is still quite visible, but doesn't seem over the top. And I wish there was a little bit of a darker matte in the shade. You get these 3 mattes, and I don't think these 3 mattes, and I wish there was a darker brown, so I'll oftentimes reach into my Bunny Blends palette for a darker brown. But other than that, I think it's really, really beautiful. And I've used a bunch of the other shimmers in here too. So like, whenever I just want a simple, everyday, neutral look, I will reach into this palette. And whenever I want a simple, neutral look with a little bit of glam, I will reach into that palette and use that multi-chrome shade, because it just gives that extra oomph without it being too much. And coming in at number 1 is a palette that I think surprised me, but in a really good way. And that is the Sugar Drizzle Firefly. Is it called a Firefly palette? Now, again, I don't like the packaging on the Sugar Drizzle palettes. I think that they are far from cute. Sorry, that was harsh. I just don't like the packaging. I think that it's nothing special. But this baby is stunning. Now, what was interesting about this palette is that I feel like the mattes in here performed a lot better than the mattes in the Butterfly palette. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a different formula, but the mattes in here definitely performed better. And these shades just work. Now, I would have never in a million years thought to do like the yellow, green, and blue, purple shades together, but they just work really well. When it comes to blue eyeshadow, I have a weakness. It's one of my weaknesses, and I cannot get enough. And in this palette, we get different textures and different types of formulas. So we do get these really, really soft multi-chrome shades that are kind of very metallic, like the ones that are in the Butterfly palette, and they work really well. But then we also get some of these more chunky shades that have a lot of texture to them, and somehow these just perform and pair really, really well. What I like about this palette is that it definitely took me out of my comfort zone when it comes to thinking of a color story and thinking about how to pull a look together. I have a very like specific way in which I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna work with this and this, and that's it, and it's gonna come together really easily. When I get color stories that are just not ones that I would have imagined, I really do have a different kind of appreciation for them, because it pulls me out of my comfort zone and forces me to pair colors that I would not have paired in my mind on my eyes, and usually that turns out to be some of my most favorite looks. So I will insert a picture of the look that I created with this. It's one that I still love till today, and the reason why I appreciate this is because it does force you to create very unique looks, because when you look at the mattes in this, you have a yellow matte, a green matte, and a black. That's it. I would not have guessed or thought to pull together the yellow and the green mattes. Like, look at this. You get blue shades and you get green shades. You would think that you would have a blue matte or a purple matte to better match because you already have this green matte. But no, you get a yellow. And I was like, why is there a yellow in here? But it does work really well, I promise you. And it does, I think this one performs a lot better than the other one. And I appreciate this one a lot more because it does bring out a different side and a more creative side of me. Okay, and that's it. Those are all 11 palettes that I tried. You guys already know I'm already on to the next. I have a bunch more palettes that I'm working through, so I will come back with another rankings video very, very soon. If you want to see that future ranking video, you need to be subscribed. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. If you like this video, if you enjoy seeing these ranking videos, make sure you go ahead and like this video as well. And leave a comment down below letting me know if you've tried any of these palettes, if any of these are on your wish list, what you thought about the rankings, you know, whatever you want to say. Let's chit chat in the comments. As always, I love you guys so very much. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye!